Well, good morning and welcome to, better get my wife going straight, welcome to Nick's Nuggets. And as you know, quite often we have special studio guests, and I've been lucky enough, and I was lucky because I only messaged Peter last night about coming in next week, and he said, I can come in tomorrow morning, which is this morning. So it's Peter Hudson. He's from the Rockingham. He's a councillor at Rockingham City. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Nick. It's great to be back with you. And yes, as you mentioned, I do maintain a pretty busy schedule, but it just happened to be a perfect alignment where I had some availability. And you mentioned I'll come on the show next Tuesday or Wednesday. And so, well, I've got a little bit of time free tomorrow morning, so let's fit it in there. So yeah, very pleased that we've been able to make it work today.
Yeah. We. Being a resident of Rockingham, it's I know there's the telegraph, the sound telegraph and that, but unless you're and sometimes we get things through the letterbox, which is great. They come every maybe 2 to 3 months.
3 months, a Chronicle, City Chronicle.
Which is great. I really do.
That's some good feedback. I'll use that next time they want to get rid of it. I'll say, no, Nick actually appreciates getting something in the box every 3 months.
Well, because I'm older, but I just find it really hard to find out what's going on in Rockingham unless you're on a website, like a Facebook, Rockingham, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Do you find that, I'll ask you some questions today, Peter. Do you find it hard that it's hard to get the message out there?
Oh, absolutely. I think, and this is we're getting straight into a deep cultural issue here, and it's something that reverberates right across the world and Australia, and I think it may be exacerbated in a community like Rockingham. But I think the issue of people's apathy towards what's going on in their local community is a major, major cultural issue, and this goes beyond, Rockingham Council or whatever it may be. The number of, and you know it as a volunteer organisation here, the number of people volunteering or seeking to be actively engaged in their community is at an all-time low. So we know that less than a third of people do any kind of volunteering, any kind of community outreach, community engagement. And so that actually makes it quite difficult for someone like me, who I'm all about, bringing the community together, doing things as a community. It becomes very, very difficult to engage the other 2/3 of people who have seemingly no interest in engaging with the community. And you ask why. So, okay, people are busy with work and they're busy with kids and, they're looking insular into their own household rather than extracurricular into the rest of the community. And say, okay, I mean, that's fair enough. This may be a sign of the times. But the practical reality and the outcome for someone like me in my position is that it is actually very difficult to engage people and just to switch people's minds on to listening and hearing and getting involved. It is a really, really major issue.
I found, sort of like going along that path, if you're a child or grandchild, whatever the case may be, they're involved in the local footy club. I would just say that it might be the Rockingham Rams down the road.
How good.
And so what happens is the kids play on a Sunday morning, Saturday, and I always found that just to get people to put the little discs out around the boundary line was a task, to get somebody to do that every week, to get somebody to wash the jumpers, to get so, and it's a case of, oh really, I'll pay my fees, and that, I understand that, but you want to get in the community. That's
You're right. Yeah, and I think that this is going to be a bit off topic, but I think there's actually a large fault within the education system that has bred this into the next generation of kids. And I say this as a young person who, I left school many moons ago, but I think it was starting to come through then, is I don't think that Australians in particular are brought up in schools to love the community and to give back to the community. I think we're told in schools, to an extent, it's a competition, and schools are very much looking insular at, just focus on your own work, do your own work, and then you can go home and do your own thing. I don't think there's as much community engagement. The love of the country, I think, is no longer taught in schools. And I think as a result, and I say this to people all the time, I work in business, if you don't have your market share and if you do not compete for your market share, then your competitors are going to absorb it. And so when we vacate the need to foster a culture of community and a culture of love for the country, then naturally that is going to disappear. And I think that's actually resulted in the apathy that a lot of people have today towards community sentiment and towards the country generally.
That's very, because when I have guests on the show, I always it's just great because I learn so much. And I watch, this is maybe, I don't know whether it's what you're saying, but we have a presenter on air who came from Finland. So naturally I thought, I'll find out a little bit about Finland. And from what I gather from the documentary I watched, they're very much community-based in Finland.
Yep.
Like, people watch out for each other, they watch out for the older people, and what you say sort of aligns with that, doesn't it?
Well, I think that's certainly the Australia that I understand that my grandparents grew up in. So it was the innocent times in Australia, and my grandparents always remarked that times were a lot better back then. I'm not just banging my fist on the table saying, it was better back then. But it certainly seems like there's been a generational shift in this country away from that community focus and away from doing what's right by your community, and instead looking to focus on ourselves or our own household. And I can't blame people for thinking of themselves. It's hard times. There is a cost of living crisis. You've got to look out for yourself and your family and the people immediately around you. But the consequence of that, this is a very big shift away from the community sentiment. And, as I said, it's not a City of Rockingham problem.
No.
It's an Australia-wide problem. But it's something that I see continues to come to the fore as things like the cost of living and housing crisis continue to, stay sticky. It's certainly something that I'm seeing more and more of, is the apathy and the lack of time. No one's got any time to give back to the community or volunteering.
Do you find too that, again, we're sort of, I will get on to some questions about Rockingham shortly, but do you find that because there's that many influences, that many information being pushed to us, that you've got to do this, you've got to do that, don't forget this, you can't do this, all those sort of things, on TV, or I'm just trying to, I know I'm using silly things, but don't forget if you want a healthy child, when you're pregnant, you can't do this.
Yep.
Oh, well, you can't do that or that. And I think there's that much information out there that to get the community message out there, they've got that information so much. What do they? That's
right. So that's what I would say, that the people are completely oversaturated with information.
I think so.
In business, we call that analysis paralysis, because there's just so much information coming at you that it becomes hard to make a decision, because you're having so many reports and things being thrown in your direction that all of a sudden it's now to make a simple decision now is a drawn-out process. And if you extrapolate that back to the average mum and dad in a house in Rockingham, if they are getting absolutely spammed with messages and information from all sources for 7 days a week, of course it's going to be quite hard for them to filter through find the things about, we're having a really engaging community information session that may actually be really relevant to you, but they're just inundated with all the other messaging that people get from life, and it's becoming quite hard to engage the average mum and dad in Rockingham.
And do you also find on that subject that the loudest and the brightest, as in colour, and all loudness as in message, that gets like top priority if people they see, look at this, car yard XYZ selling these cars for $10,000. You go, whoa. And that sort of grabs you, you think, that's cheap. So, but all other messages, you can't handle that many messages, can you?
You're right. I think you're completely right. I'm going to illustrate this with a slightly controversial example that's been occurring locally. So your listeners who've listened to our chats before, they know that I'm a big proponent of the AUKUS program and the opportunities that nuclear-powered submarines and our American and UK allies coming to Rockingham can have for the city. But there's been this very small but admittedly very loud minority of the Stop AUKUS crowd, which are effectively the Greens dressed up in another clothes, and that's their right to do that. They're entitled to their opinions and beliefs. But recently, I've started seeing it popping up a little bit more on whether it be Facebook or the little pages, or I think they might have even had a little whinge on the foreshore a couple of weeks back about just how much we need to stop AUKUS because the concept of nuclear submarines are unsafe, which is a logical fallacy in itself. But it's interesting that they use their bright colours and their angry slogans and the outrage factor, and they use that to cut through and convince people And even if I'm not a huge fan of this word, but misinformation is a word that is constantly touted in the political scene these days. And, so they'll just be fed a couple of really good cut-through messages of misinformation, accompany that with a big nuclear danger logo and, a couple of bright colours and explosions, and all of a sudden you've started this a little grassroots movement. And it's based on something that's completely illogical and completely, a fallacy. But you're exactly right in that in order to get your message across, you almost need to be that controversial, outrage-driven thing to get your message across, because it goes back to we are so inundated with all the other bland messages. And so it's those ones that can cut through. That's what gets people's attention and engages them.
And I find too, I did read, I was chatting to somebody, it was an article, and they said that with particularly people grab their opinion from social media and then they shout their opinion as you got to agree with me because they've got their information from social media. And somebody said, but these people never do any research to back up their opinion. And I just think that so many things, whether it be supermarket prices, as a classic example, and we know that who the big two are, but people still go there. And,
you're right.
And I say, well, if you check prices anywhere else, I just always do my shopping here, but the prices have gone up. And I feel like saying, well, shop around if you. But the thing is, Peter, maybe it's me, but my mind thinks with a product like chicken, which the big supermarkets sell and also the smaller ones sell, where do you think they get their chicken from? There's probably 2 chicken manufacturers. So if the big 2 get it from 1 or 2 manufacturers, then all the other 2 or the other 3 major players are going to have to get it through there as well. But it might be cheaper. They go, I wouldn't buy that though. It's not the brand I know. I think, but it's made by the same people.
It's a really interesting phenomenon, isn't it? That the big 2, especially in groceries, they're considered some of Australia's most trusted brands. And that comes at the same time. It was this morning, the ACCC released a report that about 29% of specials or the weekly discounts are actually fake. They're fake numbers that have been put in. So people are actually being ripped off. And I'm not trying to start a legal suit against the big 2.
No.
But for them to still be considered some of the most trusted brands it's mind-boggling, and it's almost because they've got a captive audience, or what they understand to be a captive audience.
Exactly.
People go for convenience, and even though they know they're paying through the nose in some cases, that they still continue to do it, and we see that all across different industries.
You do, but people complain. I think, well, either pay the price or do something about it. But it's funny because I was at the supermarket the other day, who were nameless, and I saw this thing. It was $9.95, and I thought, oh yeah, save. The big thing, save $9.95. I lift the flap, and the original price was $10. So you're saving 5 cents.
Save 5 cents.
But the thing is, it captures your attention. Oh, that must be cheap, and yet, but it's not.
It's a great sale.
It's amazing. Anyway, shall we? I love talking to Peter about all things, whether it be politics, because I would, before I ask a question about Rockingham, politics in general fascinates me, and the media's job too, I find, is not necessarily to report the story. It's to and I don't see that thing as apolitical, but I just look at the logic of it. They had, I think, Peter Dutton was down in Collier last week, and they had him going around the back part of the building. Yeah, fair enough. And they said there was outrage from protesters, and I looked and there was 6 people. 6 people.
Did you know that 3 of them actually drove down from Perth to be there?
Did they?
They were members of the Greens political party. They drove down. So, I don't know what classifies as a protest these days, but 5 people holding up a flag and complaining to a journalist. Is that really a protest? Well, clearly we've moved the goalpost here. It's going to be quite easy for me to get a protest going if I ever want to. I'll only need a couple of my mates from high school to come along, and now all of a sudden it's a protest. They won't even know what it's about, but as long as they're there, it's a protest.
And activists are activists not for the cause, but what's your job? Oh, it's almost like, oh, I'm an activist. Yeah, what do you believe in? Oh, I'm just an activist.
Yeah,
So it's almost like, oh, so do you want to protest against this? Yeah, okay. Do you believe in it? Oh, well, I don't know, but I'll protest with you.
Yeah.
And
I've started using a nickname for those kind of people is the professionally offended. There's just always something wrong. And instead of working productively for it, it's easier for me to throw my hands up and be offended by it. And it's outrageous. And
outrageous. That's a big word. It's outrageous.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. But it was very interesting. I thought just how, and not to blame all the media on this, but certainly the journalist from the ABC. I don't know if you saw Peter Dutton's press conference while he was down there in Collie. But the journalist from the ABC started sounding like one of the activists, and she was speaking along the lines of basically all of the talking points against the nuclear proposal, which is why Peter Dutton was in Collie. But Peter Dutton and I think quite rightly called her out and said, look, you're clearly speaking down an ideological line. The ABC is actually a taxpayer-funded organisation. It is supposed to be apolitical. But there was clearly just a televised debate going on between the opposition leader and a journalist from the ABC, which I find quite extraordinary. If you want to be an activist, be an activist. It's your right in this country to be entitled. It's your right in this country to be offended. It's your right in this country to be wrong. But if you are working for the taxpayer-funded news reporting organisation,
that's it.
Report the damn news. And so I found that to be quite. It was humorous that Peter Dutton called her out, but it's concerning that a trusted institution like the ABC has become what it is today.
I think, and we're not. I think the ABC lost. I'm just Peter. I think the ABC lost credibility a long time ago. And it hasn't improved. It's actually, I think, got worse. I think there was that thing. I know this is not a dumping on the ABC, but it was in the news that they misrepresented those gunshots in.
That's right. Yeah, recently that was the Four Corners story.
That's it.
About Heston Russell, and what a mess that is as well. Yeah. So, I mean, we're clearly bounding outside the realms of journalism, and now we're going into dramatisation and it's outrage baiting. Yeah. And why? Because when you drive a lot of outrage, you get a lot of clicks, and that's where your portfolio and your reputation comes from. If you're a journalist who can hit the right messages and get a lot of clicks for it, then so this is actually an ulterior motive to reporting the news, which is what the ABC used to do. But funny fact, actually, my grandfather used to work for the ABC. He's the one that taught me to speak in the way that I do. He was a journalist for about 50 years.
Really?
He's interviewed the King Charles. He's interviewed a range of prime ministers from Australia, including Bob Menzies and Bob Hawke and all the rest of them. So he's been in journalism for the ABC for many, many years, retired now, of course. But he quite often remarks how far the ABC has changed from what it was back when he was an editor. Now it seems it's more like an activist organisation.
It is, and this is going back many years ago. I was catching must have been over 10 years ago. To give you an idea, I caught a plane, and on the plane was Peter Kennedy, who was an ABC reporter. And I said, Peter, I said the ABC used to report the story. Now you're reporting opinions. What's happened? And that's what I think's happened. Yep. I don't want your opinion. I might ask you, what do you think of whoever? Yep. And that is your opinion. But I don't want you saying, oh, this is news. Yep. Well, it's not news. It's an opinion,
Yeah, if it's news delivered with your opinion, is it really news anymore?
It's not.
But we go back to, the average punters. How are they supposed to be able to wade through it? And this is the issue. It's fine if you understand that the ABC is reporting opinion. That's I'm fine for that.
Yeah.
But it's when they play it off as news, and then the average punter's only got so much time to absorb the messages, and they're going to absorb that opinion as the news.
They do.
And all of a sudden now the ABC journalists are shaping the narrative of the whole country in some cases. In my view, it's almost insidious to be doing that.
We go. I love talking. Politics and all the machinations and that behind it. So if we get back to Rockingham...
All politics is local, as they say.
So a couple of questions. First one comes in this morning when I was coming in. I think there's heard on the news that there's a huge contract which is going to go to Henderson for some, is it submarines?
Well, the announcement in Henderson is actually for upgrades to the infrastructure in that area.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's all to do with the AUKUS program and having nuclear submarine capability, but also the new surface fleet, which is still to be decided on exactly what build we will have. But the fact is, regardless of that, there needs to be significant upgrades into the Henderson shipyard, the Henderson Marine Complex as it's known, in order to get that infrastructure up to scratch and ready to go for the surface fleet and the submarines of the future. So it was, and look, I'll say from the outset, I've been a major proponent that we desperately need upgrades at the Henderson shipyard for many, many years. So I'm pleased that after years and years of fighting and clawing the government at this, they finally come to the table and made the announcement. So effectively what that is, it's a large $10 billion announcement. Unfortunately, over the forward estimates, which is the next 3 years, they've only committed $100 million for planning and design. So for our spend over the next 3 years, we're not actually going to see a single new shed built, which is rather disappointing because with inflation, the defence budget is rapidly being eaten away from. There's no new money because inflation is eating it all. So this is a bit of an issue. But the concept is certainly reassuring for defence industry that the investment is now there, the commitment is now there to spend the money and get the infrastructure ready to go. And that's something I've been publicly critical of the government, both state and federal, previously for, is the lack of urgency, the lack of preparation, because it all links back to the AUKUS program, which is, when we say we're keeping it local, Rockingham is ground zero for AUKUS. And we've got a major responsibility to stick the landing. And for that, you need leadership from the state and federal government, which, I certainly believe there are people within the state and federal government who believe in AUKUS and they really want the best for our community and they want to get things done. But when it comes to practical action and preparation, it's left something to be desired for me.
If this does go ahead, you say $100 million for planning in the next 3 years. If it does go ahead and it's billions of dollars, how will that affect, or will that affect Rockingham as regards population, housing and infrastructure?
Well, important to note that the Henderson shipyard itself actually sits within the city of Coburn, so it's our sister city.
Oh, right. Okay.
But that being said, a lot of the people who work in Henderson live in Rockingham.
Yeah.
You know, why wouldn't you want to live in Rockingham? It's a paradise. So to answer your question in one word, yes. The investment that's going in there is going to have a large knock-on effect to our community. What that means is it's thousands of jobs in the building of the infrastructure, and it'll also mean thousands of different jobs in the maintenance and ongoing work that will happen because of the shipbuilding program that we've got in Henderson, which is world-class shipbuilding that we have. So that'll bring a lot of people into the community, and that's a great opportunity because we're getting a lot more jobs and a lot more money into the local economy and things like that. But of course, as we've discussed previously, when you go and dump a few thousand people into a community, there are some significant challenges that need to be dealt with, particularly from a city of Rockingham viewpoint, that need to be addressed and need to be managed quite carefully. So, frankly, that planning hasn't happened yet because the announcement has only been made recently. But I suspect that will need to happen during this planning and design phase. Is how are we going to cope with the pressures which are already on housing? We know that Rockingham is one of the highest homeless populations within Western Australia. How are we going to cope with putting new people in, bringing all this new money, new companies in? The amenities across Rockingham will need to be adjusted to cope with that. And that's something that I'll have my foot on the pedal for as we go forward to make sure that the city of Rockingham gets the best outcome, but we're also contributing to the national mission, which is what we're talking about by AUKUS and these investments in Henderson. It's the national mission of guaranteeing Australia's sovereignty and our defence. This is Rockingham, as I say, is ground zero for this national mission. And so we need to play off the balance. We need to get the best, unlock all of the economic opportunities for our people, while also maintaining that we have a significant role to play in the world and in our country. And that's what we need to be getting on with the job in Henderson as well.
Question. This is sort of, again, I'm just thinking, and the good thing is, Peter, is that, like I say, it's really, there's a lot of things happening in Rockingham that we sort of are not aware of, and there's so many things, as I say. My question, I noticed on the corner of Rockingham Beach Road and I don't know the other one, where that old Rockingham Hotel was. That's obviously being ticked off. I'm questioning it. Being ticked off as a new complex.
Yeah, so it's in the works is the answer. So it was earlier this year, the council approved the motion to approve demolishment of the old Rockingham Hotel. That obviously hasn't occurred just yet, but it has been ticked off. So the entire complex is now, fenced off and ready to be demolished. That's on the hands of the private developer, so it's a private owner. So the city doesn't own the building. So that will presumably happen, and then the developer will need to come back to council with an application to build a new Rockingham Hotel, which is the commitment they've made, is to build another Rockingham Hotel. And that will obviously need to be ticked off by council because it will have to pass all of the environmental or the commercial obligations that they have. And I suspect that's the part that will take some time. But from our perspective at the council level, we've given them the tick of approval. Go ahead and knock down the old building. It's an eyesore anyway, as I'm sure you would agree. And then from there, we'll be looking at what's the next stage, what's the next construction and design phase. So that's where we need to head to next.
Question, this is like a question without notice, never do that to a guest musician, but I think it's a great idea, and you get a capital catch-22, I'd like Rockingham to, me personally, sort of expand a lot more, but the trouble with expanding a lot more is you get a lot more tourists and it becomes not what it was. So it's really difficult. And my question being, with the Rockingham Hotel, do you know that car park, I assume, is valuable land, and I wouldn't think they'd want it as a car. Maybe they do, or they have to. So where would people park, or is that's too far in advance to ask?
No, it's a good question, and I suspect that, and this is pure speculation on my part, but yes, the car park is owned by the same developer. If I was them, I would probably be putting a building on that pad from a commercial perspective. What that looks like, I'm not quite sure. But it certainly does raise the question of parking pressures and having more people in the area. It is an issue, something that the city is aware of and actively working on. So there are plans for a future multi-level car park in that neck of the woods, so near the Gary Holland Centre, Kent Street there. So access, people can still walk to the foreshore, but having a City of Rockingham owned and operated car park where people can go and leave their cars. So that is something that is in the works. It's too early for me to announce exactly what that would be. But it is something that I've been told we're planning on. But it's going to be so necessary because particularly I go back to the AUKUS agreement. We know that Submarine Rotational Force West, they're arriving in Rockingham in 2027. That's more than 500 sailors and their families all moving into the City of Rockingham. Everyone wants to use the foreshore, and of course they do. It's a beautiful spot.
It is.
But that means that you're going to have a significant uptick of activity in that space.
Sure.
And so you need to be able to cope with that influx of people. And parking is certainly one of the areas which is in the city scope that we need to address and get onto that issue. So I'm all about whipping everyone from local government and the city staff right up to the federal government. We need to get everything ready by 2027. That is ground zero. That's when it's happening. After then, it's too late because they're already here. So we need to have things ready for that timeline.
And if you walk down Rockingham Beach Road past in between, I forget where it is. There's a couple or two or three old units there, like single-story units, and then I think there's still a couple of blocks of land there. I mean, you would think that, I don't know who owns those, but you would think, wow, that is a lot of potential there on the foreshore.
Yep.
With blocks of land and some of these older apartments. And I'm not saying that knockdown. I'm just saying that in time, generally, Peter, no matter what city it is, something happens to those things.
We'll have to develop eventually. Yeah. And look, you'll find that those blocks of the old school style, old Rockingham houses, which still exist. They're all privately owned, of course, and the owners, they want to hold on to their slice of history, and that's fair enough. I'm a big studier of history and a big reader of history, and it's important to keep those memories alive. But you're quite right. The wheels of progress turn slowly, but they will always turn, and so you'll have to get there eventually.
Any major city in the world, you just find out that people hang on and hang on, but eventually it's developed.
It's the changing face. It's an evolution.
And it's not, look, I'm not pro knock everything down. I just think that it's foreseeable that will happen.
Yep.
So we might have mentioned this before, Peter, but I think as you read on the news when you talked about homelessness, I did see on news last night that actually Mandurah has gone above Rockingham.
Is that right? Yeah, look, I could
Not
believe
by
it.
a lot,
I
but
clearly
it
need
was.
to update the figures.
Oh,
But,
no.
look, I could believe it. I'm someone who spent a fair bit of time in Mandurah with my good friend Andrew Hasty. He's got his office down there. So, I have seen Mandurah and the good and the bad that comes with Mandurah. And Mandurah's a beautiful city, and it's amazing how much funding and investment they get, which is also even more, bizarre and mind-boggling that, the uptick of homelessness in that area has gone through the roof at the same time as they've had record funding. For different projects and investments. So it's a very interesting case. But look, this homelessness issue is not going away. The housing crisis continues to batter people. I'm someone who may be a little bit pessimistic, but I don't think there's going to be an interest rate cut in the next 6 months. I don't think there's going to be any relief for households and families, and I think it's going to lead to more people winding up on the streets. I'm someone I get up early every morning. I go for a run along the beach at Rockingham there, and the number of people sleeping in their cars along Rockingham Beach, this is Safety Bay, Warmborough Beach, is just incredible. It's every public car park along that strip has now at least one or two cars. Sometimes it's cars full of families, like 3 or 4 people sleeping in their car. And this is me going for a run 6 in the morning, and they're waking up and starting to get on with their day. Some of them are going off to work and what have you, but they're sleeping in their car because there's just no accommodation for them to be able to secure. It is just an issue which we've allowed to get so out of hand from all levels that it's now becoming, really, it's not an overemphasis to call it a crisis.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, you're talking about these people coming in 2 years' time for the Orca. I mean, it's almost like, you put up, maybe I'm got the wrong end of the stick here. You put up a building which will help 100 homeless people, but by the time you've done that, you've got 300 homeless people. So actually, it's not getting better. It's getting worse.
Absolutely right. And look, Rockingham's population is growing as well.
Yes.
We're projected to have nearly another 100,000 people living in the community over the next 20 years. So, it's not like there's less interest in people coming to Rockingham or people going to Mandurah. It's only ticking up as we have, record immigration. That's a whole other conversation in itself. But also people that want to get out of the city and they want to come to a coastal community like Rockingham.
Yes.
You can't blame them for wanting to come to this beautiful place. But the pressure that puts on the local community is, it's astounding. And we're actually facing an unprecedented time with this. We've never been faced with this situation the way it is. And the challenge that poses for all levels of government and public policy makers like myself, it's something which is, it is a profoundly important issue, because if we get it wrong, then we have the impacts and the results that we're seeing now. This is only the start if we don't actually address this issue from a meaningful standpoint.
It's a really interesting topic, isn't it? Like, and again, I'm talking from, but just, what's the word I want? Just from a layman's point of view. Like, you will see that they, if they really want to, they can build a factory or whatever in a very short space of time. Just put those concrete slabs and bang, 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 down. And my thing is, why can't we do that with houses? Why can't we get all these concrete slabs? How will we get them? Whether we make them ourselves or import them, go bang, 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 and I'm assuming, and I'm not saying we should be like China. I'm assuming if they said that in China, they said we'll have your house done in 3 days.
Yep.
And we're a year and a half, and we still use brick.
Yep.
And I just think, like we're talking about social issues and people's opinions, I just don't understand why we can't do that sort of thing.
It's really interesting that you raise that, because there was a major announcement from the coalition on this over the weekend. And I'll speak from a local government planning perspective. The reason that the land release is a big issue, and that has to be done in conjunction with the state government. But the other reason why we can't just throw down a whole bunch of concrete slabs and off we go is because of the necessary infrastructure to build houses that is extracurricular to a house. So I'm talking the power, the water, and the sewerage. These are the big three which actually stop just building houses and then they're connected to nothing. So interesting announcement that came from Peter Dutton over the weekend was to unlock about 500,000 houses worth of infrastructure. So it's a $5 billion spend on the infrastructure that goes under your house. So we need to build more sewage pipes, we need to build more electricity, and we need to have greater water generation capability for those houses. So what that will do, this is about attacking the supply availability of housing, adding to the infrastructure in order so a developer can say, yep, all we have to do now is just build the house.
That's it.
And you're ready to go in.
Yeah.
So, and of course this is a medium-term solution. It's not going to have people in housing next week, but it is a good start to getting, okay, we need this future infrastructure for the future population, and it's about spending that money now and allowing those houses to be built in a timely fashion. So it's an interesting point that you raise of why can't we just build more houses? Yeah,
I just think that the thought process, and I'm not against the infrastructure, I obviously agree with you there, but why do the builders, I'm going to say insist, is probably the wrong word, why do they insist that we need brick? Like, why? I mean, it's a very labour-intensive thing. Rather than a concrete slab, whack it up, have all the power in it. And I just think, well, I'm not saying do it, Peter, because I don't know. And people say, you can't do that, Nick. Don't be an idiot. But my thing is, has anybody suggested that? Why can't we do all these houses built with slabs and it's quicker? I don't know. But
I actually find so I've done a bit of research into the small modular houses. Yeah. And I've been approached by a few developers who are interested in running something like whether it be a homeless crisis accommodation or something like that within the city. But the guts of it is they're not traditional brick and mortar houses. They're like small modular, quick to put up, quick to take down when you need houses. Why can't we do that? And it actually a lot of it will come back to the red tape. So it's we're no longer talking about the builders saying, oh, it's not going to make us enough money. We're talking about the government enforcing strict standards, saying every house needs to be brick and mortar. We're talking every house needs to be hooked up to this kind of waste system. And so when you do that, you actually take away a lot of the flexibility of builders and people to do what they want to do and get themselves into housing. So there's a whole range of moving parts to the housing issue.
And like everything, it's, no matter what we talk about, it is, when you call it, I don't know, it's progress, but it is, these things are going to happen. Like you see something that was very old school and may have worked 30, 40, 20 years ago, but all of a sudden, it's no different to technology. Like people, I want to go to the bank and this, that, the other. Yeah, I know. I'm not disagreeing with you, but unfortunately, that's the way it's going to go. Technology, everybody has to have an email address now. Everybody has to have a mobile phone.
Yep.
Now, they just have to.
Yep.
So whether you want it or not, whether you agree with it or not, it's the way of the world which is going.
Yep, sometimes your decisions are made for you, and
you
can't always set the narrative. Sometimes you have to roll with the punches, and it's not always fun, it's not always comfortable, but sometimes you need to have that resilience and take the punch on the chin and keep moving and find a way to move forward. And I can apply that to so many realms of life, but this is absolutely one where you're exactly right. You need to be able to adapt with the times.
Look, otherwise you just end up bitter, and you're not going to win, for want of a better word. Anyway, it's like if you want to buy. I bought some tickets yesterday for a concert coming up next year. And they put the price, and you agree to the price of the ticket, right? And then they say, "Well, how do you want this delivered?" There was 3 ways, I think: on your phone, a PDF, or another way, right? Now, which one you chose, I should have said, it was an extra $8.40.
Ah.
And I'm thinking, but if you don't put down what way you want the tickets delivered, you don't get the tickets.
No.
So it's $8.40 to, I think
processing fee. Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. Like very cheeky.
You can't. It's the same with airlines. Unless you've got a credit card, and they're going to charge you 1 point blah, blah, blah % on a credit card. Oh, well, I don't want a credit card. Well, you can't fly.
Yeah. When's the last time you paid for a plane ticket with cash?
You can't.
You can't. I don't think I've ever been able to do that. So
You get all yours free, man. I don't know what you get.
I wish. Can you let me know where the free plane tickets are? I'd like to take a little trip to Hawaii. Maybe it would be a really nice spot to visit. So you let me know, mate. We'll go there for Christmas. That'll be my Christmas present to me. There's a couple of plane tickets to Hawaii. I'd love that, mate. That'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, you got to have the joke. So, Peter, your job as councillor. And I'm just asking a general question because I do not know, and I wouldn't. So, do councillors get rewarded?
Yeah, so there is, based on the size of the shire, is how they calculate a stipend. So if you're a shire, so a regional town, you get in band 1. And then if you're a town, so a town of Victoria Park, for example, they're in the next band up. And then a city, like Rockingham or Stirling or Coburn, they're on the next band up again. So councillors do receive a stipend. It's not a salary, and there's no super paid on that. It's just it's almost like you're supposed to think of it as a voluntary position with a monetary allowance. That's paid every month.
And that's what I thought it was about. I mean, it's a bit like I would assume you wouldn't become a councillor to make money.
No, certainly not. No,
you know what I mean?
No, definitely not. There is an interest. Funny you bring that up, though. There is an interesting motion coming to council tonight, actually, at our meeting, which is around the realms of local government reform, and that is to this motion that's coming forward is an advocacy motion to WALGA, which is the West Australian Local Government Association. I know that's a mouthful, but this motion that's coming before council tonight, the wording of it is effectively to take an advocacy position to make local government the running of and its elections like they are over east. So in WA, as a very brief rundown, there's no parties, there's no partisan politics involved with local government. Local government councillors it's a voluntary / part-time position, and they function very much as an extracurricular to your day job sort of thing. Over east, very different. So the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, the Greens Party, they run candidates, endorse candidates for local government. These candidates are full-time appointments, so they pay well.
Seriously?
They're a full-time job for many of the eastern states councils, and they're actually given full-time responsibilities. Like they have to be, very bright, very competent, and competitive in order to get elected. There's certainly positives and benefits to partisan politics. But as a creature of a party, I do think reform in this space is probably something that is worth having a conversation. And so what do we get from local government now? How could it be better? Yeah. And then is it worth, the process of changing over to that? There's 3 moving pieces that you have to consider. But it's really funny that you bring up the whole thing about salaries, because people say, "Oh, you're in politics for money." No, absolutely not at all. And because if there was money in politics, then please let me know where it is, because I don't have any. But it's interesting because we do it for the values that we have, and most of us want to better the community. That's why we do it. But I think there certainly is a conversation to be had. If you get full-time positions for councillors, will you get different or better councillors who can deliver different or better for the city? Yeah. It's an interesting conversation to have, and I'm not trying to sack any of my colleagues, it's certainly something that bears, in my view, a bit of a further conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. And I'm not, I'm just an average Joe Blow voter, but if you want the top people, and you want the top people in government, then you've got to pay the money. And, I use the example of, and I'm not, again, I have nothing for or against this bloke, and I don't, but I would assume that Basil Zemplis was on the footy show, he was on this, he was on that, Channel 7 News, on the radio. I would have said that he was on a decent whack. Now he's sort of left that field, and he's gone in to run, I think, in Churchlands as a member.
Yeah, as a candidate, yep.
A candidate. Now, I don't know how much a first, whatever, backbencher gets, but I would say it would pale into insignificance of what he got when he was in the media. So you say, well, is he throwing away? He's maybe only getting a third of what he was. So what is he doing?
Look, I can tell you as someone who has been a candidate previously, there is a whopping salary of $0 for being a candidate to Parliament. It's only once you're elected, you start collecting your backbench salary. But Basil is actually the Lord Mayor of the city of Perth.
That's right, true he is,
So,
yeah.
so I'm fairly sure that he would be collecting more as the Lord Mayor of Perth, which it's a regional international hub. Than he would be as the state parliament's member for Churchland. So yeah, I don't think it's money that motivates him. The same thing, like he was on the telethon ball the other night, and on the desk say we've raised $83 million. It's a record across the whole world for all time. So don't tell me that he's giving this up to go and find money in politics. He's doing it because he believes in his community and he wants to give back in a way which is different to what he's been doing for the last 30 years, and he has been since he left his captaincy of the Waffle.
Right.
I followed this guy's career. He's been over to the Olympics to commentate on the swimming and things like that.
He has.
So this idea that he's doing it for selfish purposes, I think, it's a moot point when you actually consider who he is and what he's done. This is a guy who is now very motivated by, I think, giving back to the community and getting better from government.
Here's one. We might wind up with this one, Peter, because I know you're a VBM, very busy man.
I've been called worse.
I was talking to somebody at the station, and I won't name names, and he was chatting about the upcoming election in America, and he said that his one of his children, who's I think a young teenager, hates Donald Trump, and he goes, well, why? I just hate him. And that was a bit like we said before, like, if people hate Donald Trump, and that's fine. If you say to me, Nick, I don't like Donald Trump because of therefore I've come to this decision, I'd say, okay, Peter, I understand.
Yep.
But if I ask you, Peter, what do you have against Donald Trump? I just don't like him.
Yep.
I find that a really empty thing.
You say it's interesting because you say it's an empty thing, but when you have an empty thing, but you've got this hatred against someone, it allows the opportunity for that emptiness to become filled with something which is malicious and nasty and aggressive. And I suspect that's actually got a lot to do with why there's been 3 assassination attempts against Donald Trump during this campaign, which is more than any other president or presidential nominee during a presidential campaign in American history. There's never been 3 assassination attempts on a former president, running as a candidate. And I think that is because a lot of people think they hate Donald Trump. They can't understand exactly what he's done to make them hate him. And so it's easier to just say, someone should take him out. The number of people who I have brushed paths with, said they would say to me, I would shoot him if I got the chance. It's like, but do you really understand why? But then it's those people who can, when they're on the extreme, they can become dangerous like that, and they're the ones that are actually taking shots at a president. Yeah. And, it's bizarre to me that you would ever want to kill someone, let alone someone who's, been a leader of the free world, just because I don't like them with no particular reasoning. This is something to me, it's bizarre.
It is, and it's funny, we take it back to AFL, there might be a player that I dislike, right? Genuinely dislike. And then people say, I hope he breaks a leg or gets an ACL. And I'm thinking, wow. I mean, I don't like the bloke, but I wouldn't wish that, like you say. I wouldn't wish killing him or him getting maimed. That's different.
Yeah, it's and it speaks to how polarised and divided the states are right now. And at the time of this stream, we're about just over 2 weeks out from an election which, depending on how it goes, I think there will certainly be riots again. Whether that's people who think Donald Trump's election was stolen last time, or it'll be people on the other side who are so outraged just by the concept of Donald Trump that they go and start rioting and looting as well. And we always say we're very pleased that we're in Australia and not living in the US. So I certainly am. But it's just a really, really nasty and divisive cycle this time around. Maybe it's the personalities who are running. But look, it's a really interesting time. But the actual breakdown of the numbers, I think, is going to be, as someone who's quite interested in
I am as well.
In politics, I think it's going to be really interesting how it shapes up on the day. It's going to be a really interesting result, whatever happens. And I think it will certainly stand as a flashpoint, one of those times which we will be able to look back and say the world changed, better or for worse. We can't quite tell, but I think whatever the result is, the world will have changed in a significant way, not just for the next 4 years of American politics or global politics, but I think something that will be almost generational. We're going to see a really significant event that day.
It's really funny. I read something, because like you, I follow it, and I think 2 weeks ago, maybe I could be wrong, but 2 weeks ago, the betting agencies had Donald Trump at $2.10, and I think Harris was round about, I don't know, do you want to be $1.80 or $1.90 to win. I looked up the odds this morning, and Donald Trump is $1.57, and Harris is $2.30, and somebody said, the bookies don't usually get it wrong. And then somebody said, no, but there might be a lot of rich people in America who put money on Donald Trump to say, oh, look, he's favoured to win, and that will influence people's votes because they like to back a winner.
That could happen, but it would happen for the other side in the same respect. Like Hollywood, for example, they poured in was $130 million into the Biden campaign before he pulled the pin. So, I mean, I think there's certainly no shortage of money. It's amazing we're in a cost of living crisis, but there's so much money going around to political campaigns. But I certainly think that the money argument, I tend to think you look at Donald Trump's base, it's very much the Rust Belt in the middle of the US, blue-collar, working-class families, oil rigs, things like that. These are not people who are putting in $1 million. But then you look at the Harris, supporters, and they're over in California and New York and Vegas. A lot of these people are actually quite cashed up, and they're supporting those sort of more progressive, anti traditional resources and industries and things like that. So I think that the money point would be sort of moot on the whole, because they'll both have they both have money. I don't know if one side's all cashed up, and we see the same of that in Australia as well. So the Liberals are in with big business, and mate, can you please tell me where the money is then? There's this aspersion that Labor's working class and the Liberals are all big business. This is completely false, and so I think we see the same in America.
Because I was growing up that Labor was for the working man and Liberals were for the business people, but now I find that they're they agree on a lot, for want of a better word. I know there's still differences. Anyway, I'll over this question, Peter, so that we can just see what people... Who do you think will win the US election?
If I had to call it today, I suspect it will be Donald Trump by a very narrow margin. Okay. So I could also give a prediction.
Oh, look out.
So I think, if we recall back to the 2016 presidential election, it was Hillary and Donald Trump then.
That's right, yes.
Hillary won the popular vote.
Yes.
So she got more votes across the country on the whole, but Donald Trump was able to win the Electoral College, which is what actually determines who is the president. And the way you do that is by winning the swing states, which actually get you the numbers in the Congress in order to win. So in the 2016 election, Hillary won the national vote, the popular vote, but Donald Trump was able to sneak in with the Electoral College. I could almost predict the same thing is going to happen again, because I think there's a really large swath of Gen Z and a whole bunch of people who are going to turn out and vote for Kamala. But are they going to be able to win the swing states? I tend to think that Donald Trump is edging out in those swing states, given that a lot of them are near the Rust Belt, which is where the traditional Republican base is. I tend to think he might just sneak in with a majority government. So that's my bold prediction.
No.
That's my view, what it could be.
Nobody holds you to it. It's just like we chatted before. It's just an opinion, People sort of get up and say, Peter Hudson said that, Donald Trump's going to win, but who's he to say that? And I think you say what you want, people out there, and we'll have an opinion as well.
I do a lot of study and I follow this very closely. So that's my guesstimate. It's my my best guess. So,
that's what we're all about. So people can they contact you personally, Peter, or do they have to go to...
Absolutely. No. I'm very, very accessible as a public servant, for want of a better term. Like everyone, I'm on Facebook, so that's probably where you can get me the easiest, at Councillor Peter Hudson. So that's CR Peter Hudson. That's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. If you're in business, I'm pretty fairly active on LinkedIn. But also for the more traditional means, my name, number and email is on the back of the City Chronicle that you get every 3 months, or on the City of Rockingham websites as well.
Yeah. And look, I think just to go back to our initial conversation about community, I mean, you know, you can't do more than give out your name, your address, your contact details, and say you're available. And, you know, if people have a question, if you have a question about something, Rockingham, or why has this happened, can you give me information? You have the chance to do it, and that's so you shouldn't really complain about something. And I said, well, what have you done about it? Oh, nothing, it's just wrong. Yeah, well, people need to know.
That's right. And look, my door is always open for the feedback, constructive criticism, you know, what your ideas for the area are, anything that I can do to help. That's, you know, this is why I'm in the game.
That's it.
So, yeah, in some cases, the onus is on you. I don't know what your problems are if you won't tell me.
It.
So, yeah, I need you to reach out and let me know. What can I do for you? That's my one message for the day is what can I do for you?
Yeah,
Get in contact with me and let me know.
You know, he's not a big, bad ogre. No, you're very approachable. You've been on my show a few times. I've met you personally. I have no affiliation to Peter. But I do know you're open, and people will walk in the street, oh, you know, you're blah, blah, and they can ask you questions. Is that all we can ask for, Peter?
Absolutely. So, yep.
As always, thanks for coming in. Thanks for all the information you give us about AUKUS and this and council. It's just great.
My pleasure, Nick. There's a lot going on, and I'm glad that we get to cover it once every couple of months. It's great to have this regular schedule that we've got going on.
Okay, thanks again, Peter. And we'll go with a bit of music, and then I'll be back to chat after that.